Top five, top five, top five.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of The Countdown, where we're ranking the top 5 NFL draft sleepers of all time.
These are unheralded players that are flying under the radar during the NFL draft and the true sleepers, but they wanted up breaking out. We could have a bunch of Hall of Famers on this list.
Yeah, a lot of players to choose from with this list. This encompasses the entire history of the NFL. So we're going way back in the archives, but we had to get it down to 5 players to make this list. So without further ado, let's get into it.
But before we move on, Rob, make sure y'all smash that like button and damn sure subscribe to our channel because we're coming back every single week with some fire for the countdown.
That's right. And before we get into the countdown, go check out Fan Gear Nation for some great jerseys.
Not only do they got jerseys, but they got canvases for the wall, shirts, sweatshirts, and all of this for the low. But don't worry, we still got y'all with a discount code.
That's right. This is PSO's official merchandise partner, so you can use code PSO15 for 15% off your first order. So go type in fangearnation.com while those low prices are still available. Support your favorite squad and save a good amount of money while doing it.
And now, back to the countdown.
And so starting out with number 5, we got to start out hot, B. We're going Richard Sherman with the Seattle Seahawks, a 6th-round pick. You know why?
Sure.
Because he started out as a receiver,
yeah.
And they drafted him as a cornerback. Huge position switch coming out of Stanford with John Harbaugh as his head coach, who ended up becoming the 49ers head coach with their arch rival of the Seattle Seahawks. Great part of the story. And Richard Sherman, though, right out the gate, started making an impact as that 6th-round pick, started making plays, started showing his coverage ability, and became the Richard Sherman that we all know today as one of the best trash talkers of all time because he backed it up on the field. He did his work. He earned the All-Pros. He earned the Pro Bowls. He let people know that he's one of the best, if not the best, cornerbacks in the game, and he's one of the best sleepers of all time.
Richard Sherman, all 2010s teams. You think about the Legion of Boom, that Seattle Seahawks team that continuously was not only making it to the playoffs, not only making it to the NFC Championships, but was making it to the Super Bowl. And this was early in Richard Sherman's career. In his 2nd and 3rd year in the career, he got 8 picks in back-to-back years, and he wound up leading that up with 3 straight first-team All-Pros. And he was the true leader of that Legion of Boom. You know,
no doubt.
Brandon Browner is one of the more guys that was all probably the worst of the 4, but Cam Chancellor wasn't a big talker, and we saw kind of what happened with Earl Thomas at the end of his career, so he wasn't talking too much and leading much at all. So Richard Sherman was really keeping that secondary together, and obviously that's one of the best secondaries that we've seen since we've been alive for sure. So shout out Rich Sherm. You seeing him on TV now, one of the greatest players of all time, and a sure-fire Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no doubt. He was a centerpiece of, like you said, one of the best defenses ever, one of the best secondaries of all time.
Long-rangey corner.
Yeah, exactly. Started kind of transcending the game of now all these teams are one of those long cornerbacks. So Richard Sherman, heavily influential player in the history of the league, and that's just starting off the list. So moving on to number 4, another heavily influential player. A lot of people might not know this guy's name, though. We're talking Deacon Jones from the Rams back in the day, B.
Y'all might not know his name, but after hearing a name like Deacon Jones, he's hard to forget.
That's
and
right.
Deacon Jones was a player back in the 60s, actually playing during the Civil Rights days, and he actually was known for his head slap. So he said, I remember I seen in an interview, he said, when you smack somebody or you go towards the head, they blink for a second, and that's all I need to get past somebody.
Gets right in their head.
Gets right in their head, gets right to the fucking quarterback. And Deacon Jones had plenty of 20-sack seasons back in the 60s, even though sacks weren't really an official stat back then. You still see like plenty of tape, like color tape, of him actually just dominating people, smacking them in the head, getting to the quarterback, strip sack.
Yeah,
so really
black and white.
No, not at all. So he's a true pioneer for the game, and he actually was one of the players that coined the phrase sack. He actually said it a lot and really emphasized it and marketed it. So Deacon Jones, a true difference maker in the history of football.
Yeah, Deacon Jones. I mean, what else is there to say? One of the pioneers of the sacks game, putting it on the map. Like you said, before it even became an official stat, Deacon Jones was one of the players of why they made it official sacks. This guy's making all these plays, having this big impact, and they're like, we don't know how to track it. So let's call it a sack, and then we're going to give him credit for it. And now that's influenced the game in a large way. Now you see all the J.J. Watts and the Aaron Donalds and the Myles Garretts. They get credit because of what Deacon Jones laid the foundation for. And so we couldn't just have only, 21st century players on this list. We had to go back in the archives, had to find the players who went deep in the draft, Deacon Jones went in the 14th round.
14th round.
Brandon, there's 7 rounds in the NFL draft now, and he went 14th. So 2 times as many rounds. Just shows how much the league has changed since then. But Deacon Jones still has had an impact on the game to this day.
As a matter of fact, Rob, you can't even do the head slap anymore. So he's a major reason why that move is illegal, because he was just dominating the game. You smack somebody in the face and the lineman closes their eyes. Shit, you're probably getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a 15-yard penalty nowadays.
Yeah, imagine Aaron Donald doing that.
Hands to the face, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So Deacon Jones at number 4. And then moving on to number 3, we have another controversial player in Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of controversy comes with this player off the field, but let's just talk about what happened on the field, okay? Coming through the Pittsburgh Steelers as a 6th-round pick, starting out as a punt returner, starting out as a special teamer, quickly evolved into a high-profile receiver for the Steelers, pretty much a 10-year run of dominance for Pittsburgh where he was racking up record after record, accolade after accolade, putting up high-level, all-pro caliber production for the Steelers. It was really him and Julio Jones during that decade of who's the best receiver. Is it AB? Is it Julio? But Julio's a freak of nature. Julio's out here running 40-yard dashes on a broken foot at 4'4", going 6 overall, still in the draft. Antonio Brown went in the 6th round. So he came in with a much less prospect pedigree, which goes to show how much more work he had to put in to get to that point, how much more practices he had to do, how much more film he had to study, how much more reps he had to put on the field to get to that level of player that he became. And that's just something I'll always have respect for. So obviously he's done a lot of things to lose my respect, lose the people's respect, but those type of things are something that I think you have to give credit for, and especially in a topic like this of who's the biggest sleepers of the draft, you can't forget Antonio Brown.
We're talking about Antonio Brown, AB. You know a lot about him off the field, but more importantly, you know about him on the field. And AB came into the league as a 6th-round pick out of Central Michigan, 5'10" receiver. Like you said, Rob, he's not Julio Jones, who's a 6'4", 4'4" guy. Went to Alabama. We're talking about Alabama versus Central Michigan here.
Right.
And if you hear one thing about AB, you always hear about his work ethic. And I remember back in the day when I had AB on Snapchat and shit, all you would see is him working all the time. Footwork. You know, Tony Toe Tap. And AB came into the league, like you said, Rob, returner, special team guy. And about after a year and a half, the Steelers said, we really got something special here, really enforced him, fill into the roster, let Emmanuel Sanders walk, and the rest is history. I mean, breaking record after record. We're not talking about yards. We're talking about receptions. We're talking about 5'10" players just finding ways to get in the end zone, touchdowns, massive plays. I even think about him catching punt returns like in the middle of his career and kicking somebody in the fucking face on the Browns and shit. So AB impacted the game in a lot of ways, and doesn't really matter how he went out. When he was at his peak, nobody was fucking with AB.
Yeah, the Steelers are known as a franchise to take sleeper receivers later in the draft, and no one was more the epitome of that than Antonio Brown, who cracks this list at number 3. But moving on to number 2, we have one of the greatest tight ends of all time, Shannon Sharpe, B.
Shannon Sharpe. You hear about him a lot on TV, but back when Shannon Sharpe was a prominent tight end, you really saw a lot of guys blocking back then. But you really saw Shannon Sharpe year after year transforming the game, really spreading things out by being that vertical tight end. Yeah. Great route running. He was really starting to pack up his stats after stats. And this was an HBCU guy, lasted until like 6th or the 7th round. I think it was the 7th round as a matter of fact. Yeah, out of Savannah State. So he was really at a small school. HBCU was really unheralded. And back in the day then, you weren't seeing too much tape where a lot of guys come out of HBCUs and getting drafted too high. So Shannon Sharpe, pioneer of the tight end game, really transformed the game to being a more passing game to the tight ends nowadays.
Yeah, like a lot of players on this list, a low-profile player coming out of the draft, didn't really get much attention, but then reached that level of caliber throughout his career where you just have undeniability when you compare to the greatest players in the game. And Shannon Sharpe, now you see him on Fox. Now you see him saying this, saying that, getting into it with whoever, getting into it with NBA players sometimes. Shout out John Morant. But when you go back to his career, you just look at how he revolutionized the game. Like you said, tight ends were known as a blocking position back then. It was pretty much like having 6 offensive linemen on the field. But Shannon Sharpe said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to start elevating the passing attack and help make that Broncos offense one of the best of all time alongside John Elway and Terrell Davis, another great sleeper of all time. So Shannon Sharpe's imprint on the game will live live on forever. And to do that, coming out the 7th round out of Savannah State, like you said, just goes to show how much he accomplished throughout his career, how much he had to do to get there, and just the impact that he continues to have to this day on the game of football.
Yeah, wow, that was a great point bringing up John Elway and Terrell Davis. Shannon Sharpe was a fucking winner. He played for the Broncos, won. Ended up going to the Ravens, won. So this guy was making a big impact on the field. 3-time champ. So making a big impact on the field and off the field with his teammates. A true glue guy. He's one of those guys, when he's on your team, you love him. When he's off your team, you fucking hate him. But Shannon Sharpe's really one of those fucking guys.
Absolutely. But he couldn't crack the number 1 spot because number 1, who else? Tom Brady, 199th overall pick, the greatest sleeper in all of sports. I don't care if we're talking football, I don't care if we're talking basketball, baseball, name a sport. There's no greater story of an underdog coming out to become the greatest of all time at his profession, at least for now, and Tom Brady, who just absolutely did everything you can ask a quarterback to do. He was as accurate as ever. He was a great leader, came through when it mattered, helped cultivate an offense that essentially changed the game. Like, they weren't this explosive offense, dropping 30-yard passes all over the place, doing this, doing that, but he meticulously moved the ball down the field, consistently got first downs, consistently converted those crucial 3rd downs, those crucial red zone drives. Seems like whenever you needed Tom Brady to step up, he was right there, ready to do it, coming through to put his team in a position to succeed. And 7 Super Bowls later, we can consider him the greatest sleeper of all time.
Greatest sleeper of all time, probably the greatest player of all time. Tom Brady, as consistent as it gets. You always knew he was going to put the ball where it needed to go. You always knew that you did not want him with the ball at the end of the game, and that's why he continuously won and won and won. And it didn't matter. They had a great defense, had a great head coach. We see what kind of happened to the Patriots once Tom Brady left. And Tom Brady's just one of the greatest sleepers of all time. You talk about a 6th-round pick, winds up becoming the best quarterback of all time, wins the most rings of all time, the Michigan man. I mean, you seen the pre-draft pictures of Tom Brady.
Yeah,
his body and his arm clearly wasn't all that, and it still hasn't ever really been all that. But when you're a precision passer and you have the mindset to be one of the greatest of all time, that's sometimes enough to take you to your highest point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think every player on this list you can say that for is they didn't let that roadblock earlier in their career of, hey, you're going to be this low draft pick coming in. You're not going to get many opportunities. You're not going to have high expectations. They say, you know what, fuck that. I know what I believe in. I know I can do this. I know who I can become. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to do what I got to do to get to where I want to go. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't let anything get in their way. They continuously executed. They were consistent with their craft, and they took it seriously. They prioritized it. They did all the things off the field that doesn't get seen. And that's why they're here today being talked about on the countdown.
That's a great point, Rob. All these guys are drafted to be backups. When you're getting drafted after the 4th round, for real, yeah, you're expected to be a backup, a practice squad guy, one of those. You think about Tom Brady sitting behind Drew Bledsoe. You probably don't think you're ever going to play anytime soon. Drew Bledsoe goes down.
Drew Bledsoe.
First overall pick, Drew Bledsoe. Supposed to still be in his prime. He goes down, they throw you in the game, the rest is history.
Changed the game of football forever. So those are the top 5 NFL draft sleepers of all time. Let us know who you think should be the top 5 NFL draft sleepers. You can go to Pro Sports Outlook, check the link, put them in whatever order you're feeling, leave a comment, let us know. Obviously, you probably agree Tom Brady's number 1, but should Shannon Sharpe be number 2? Should Antonio Brown be up there? Should Deacon Jones be on the list? Let us know what you think in the comments.
Should Terrell Davis be on the list? 2000 rusher, hurt his knee, might have messed up his career. But at the end of the day, drop those comments, drop those likes, and also let us know who you think is going to be a sleeper in the 2023 NFL Draft.
That's right. So until next time, we'll see you for another great episode of The Countdown.
Peace.